The alarm does not sound like the drills. It sounds wrong, higher, like the station itself is afraid. I am Daniel Cole, communications officer on Horizon Station, and when the alert lights turn red across every panel in the room, my hands are already moving before my mind catches up. 6 months of drills taught my fingers what to do. Nothing taught me what to feel. Signal incoming, deep space. Bearing 317, says Lucy Marsh from the sensor deck, her voice tight. It is not one of ours. The bridge goes quiet, except for the hum of machines. Commander Owen Bishop steps out of his office, still buttoning his jacket, eyes already scanning the main display. He has led this station for 4 years. I have never seen him move this fast. Put it through, he says. The screen fills with a shape none of us have ever built. It is not a ship. It is a message, translated by our systems into words that appear letter by letter, slow and deliberate, as if whoever sent it wants every syllable to sting. To the species designated human, of the world designated Earth, this is a directive from the Kreisi Dominion, rulers of 11,000 worlds across 4 spiral arms. Your world has been assessed. Your technology is primitive. Your species is fractured and violent among itself. You will surrender all weapons, all defense systems, and all sovereign governance within 72 of your hours. Failure to comply will result in correction. Nobody speaks. I read the words twice, then a third time, waiting for them to make more sense. They do not. Correction, says Lucy quietly. What does that mean? It means what you think it means, Bishop says. I look at the clock in the corner of my screen. 72 hours. 3 days. I think about my sister in Manchester, about my parents in a small house outside Leeds, about every person on the surface of Earth going about their morning without knowing that a message just arrived, promising to end their world if they refuse to kneel. Bishop turns to me. Cole, get this to Earth Defense Council. Every relay we have. I want this in front of every head of state within the hour. Yes, sir. My fingers move across the console, routing the signal through every satellite link Horizon Station has access to. As I work, more data streams in from Lucy's sensors, and what she finds makes the room colder. Commander, she says, there is a fleet behind the message, still 4 days out at their current speed, but it is big. I am counting shapes now. At least 200 vessels, and some of them are larger than anything we have ever put a number on. Bishop does not answer right away. When he does, his voice is steady in a way that tells me it is costing him effort to keep it that way. Get me a channel to the council. Now. I patch him through. 12 faces appear on the split screen. Presidents and prime ministers, and generals from a dozen nations that have spent centuries arguing over borders and trade and history, now staring at the same impossible message on their own screens. For a moment, none of them say anything either. Then the arguing starts. A voice from the North American delegation wants to open immediate communication, to ask for terms, to buy time. A voice from the European bloc says surrender is not a position anyone can hold, that no government has the authority to hand over an entire planet. Someone else asks if this could be some kind of test, a trick, a probe to see how we respond. Lucy's data answers that question before anyone else can. 200 ships does not sound like a probe. I sit at my console and listen to the most powerful people on Earth argue about the end of the world, and all I can think about is how small our station suddenly feels, floating here at the edge of the solar system, watching a storm approach that none of us can outrun. They want an answer, says a woman on the screen, her voice cutting through the noise. I recognize her as the Secretary General, Grace Hollis. She looks older than she did in the news broadcasts I have seen. 72 hours. That is not a negotiation. That is a countdown. Then we negotiate anyway, says another voice. We ask for time. We ask what correction means. We find out if there is a path that does not end in surrender or ruin. And if there is not, Grace says, what then? Do we hand over our weapons and hope the people who wrote that message have mercy in them? Do we bet every life on this planet on the kindness of something that calls us primitive, before it has spoken to a single one of us. Nobody answers her. I feel a strange pressure building behind my eyes, and I realize it is anger, not fear, though the fear is there too, sitting cold in my stomach. Anger, at being told what we are worth by something that has never set foot on our world, never read our books or heard our music, or watched a sunrise change color over an ocean. Anger, at being called fractured and violent by strangers who arrived with an army instead of a hand extended in peace. Bishop must feel something similar, because when he speaks again his voice carries a new edge. Council members, I have served this station for 4 years, and before that I served in 3 different national fleets, before Earth had a single one. I am not a politician, I do not decide policy, but I will tell you what my instruments tell me, and what my instruments tell me is that a fleet of 200 ships is heading toward a species they have already decided is beneath them. If we surrender, we do it on their terms, forever. If we resist, we do it as ourselves, however that ends. Grace Hollis looks directly into the camera, and for a moment it feels like she is looking directly at me. Bring it to a vote, she says. The vote takes 4 hours. I sit at my console the entire time, forwarding data, updating projections, watching the alien fleet creep closer on Lucy's display, one small dot growing by degrees into something that will soon be visible without instruments at all. I do not eat. I barely notice the ache building in my shoulders from sitting still for so long. When the vote finally comes back, it is not unanimous. Nothing involving that many governments ever is. But it is decisive enough. 206 nations, in one voice built from 1,000 disagreements, refuse to surrender. Grace Hollis reads the statement herself, and her voice does not shake even once. To the Kreesi Dominion, Earth has heard your directive. Earth does not accept it. We are not primitive. We are not fractured beyond the point of standing together when it matters most. If you come seeking submission, you will not find it here. If you come seeking correction, you will find every hand this world can raise against you. This is our answer. The transmission goes out into the dark, aimed at a fleet that will not receive it for hours yet, traveling toward an enemy that has never once lost a war like this. Lucy turns from her console, her face pale but her jaw set. They are not going to like that answer, Commander. No, Bishop says, staring at the display where the fleet continues its slow, patient advance. They are not. I look at the clock again. 68 hours remain. Somewhere below us, on a blue and green world that has no idea how close it stands to the edge of everything, people are waking up to news broadcasts that will change how they see every sunrise from now on. I think about my sister again, about how she likes to run along the canal near her flat every morning before work, headphones in, completely unaware that up here, in the cold dark above her world, a vote just decided whether she gets to keep doing that at all. Bishop keys the intercom, and his voice goes out to every crew member on Horizon Station. All hands, we are no longer running drills. Prepare the station for defense posture. Whatever comes next, we do not run, and we do not kneel. I take a breath, steady my hands, and get back to work. There is no time left for fear to slow me down. There is only the countdown, ticking towards something none of us have ever faced before, and a promise, spoken by 200 nations as one, that we intend to keep. An hour later, Lucy calls me over to her console without looking away from her screen. You should see this, she says. She has pulled a long-range visual feed, magnified past anything I have ever used it for. At first I see nothing but stars. Then she adjusts the focus, and a shape resolves out of the darkness, faint but unmistakable, a single point of reflected light where no natural object should be. That is the lead ship, she says. Just the lead ship. The rest of the fleet is still too far out to resolve, but that one is close enough to catch light from our sun. I stare at it for a long moment. It is nothing more than a pixel of brightness against the black, and still it makes my chest tighten in a way that words on a screen never did. A message can be argued with. A fleet cannot. Do the council know it is visible now? I ask. They will in about 6 minutes, Lucy says. I already sent it. Bishop walks over and studies the image without a word, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Around us, the rest of the crew continues preparing the station, sealing bulkheads, running diagnostics on systems that have not been tested outside of drills, checking oxygen reserves, as if we might need to hold our breath through whatever comes next. I request a short personal channel down to the surface, and Bishop nods without me having to ask why. He knows every person on this station has someone below who needs to hear their voice before the countdown runs any further. My sister answers on the second ring, her face tired, hair still damp from a shower. Daniel, have you seen the news? I have seen more than the news, I say. Listen to me. Whatever happens over the next few days, stay near people you trust. Do not travel far. Keep your phone charged. You are scaring me. I am trying to keep you safe, I say, and I realize as I say it that it is the truest thing I have told anyone all day. I cannot tell you everything, but I need you to trust me. She goes quiet for a moment, and behind her tired eyes I can see her doing the same thing I did an hour ago, trying to make sense of something that refuses to make sense. Okay, she finally says. Okay, Daniel, be careful up there. I will. I end the call before my voice can betray how little I believe that promise. Around me, the station hums with quiet, focused motion, 100 small tasks building toward one enormous purpose. Outside the viewport, past the glass and the vacuum and the growing distance, that single point of light continues to grow brighter, hour by hour, closer with every breath we take. 67 hours remain. I return to my station, and I do not look away from the display again. 60 hours before the deadline, I stop sleeping in shifts and start sleeping when I collapse. Nobody tells me to. It just happens, the way exhaustion catches up to everyone on Horizon Station once the first wave of fear burns off and the real work begins. Below us, Earth does not waste a single hour. I watch it happen through 100 different data feeds, fragments of a planet turning every resource it has toward one purpose. Shipyards, that used to build cargo vessels, and passenger liners now run around the clock building something else entirely. Factories that made cars and appliances retool overnight to produce hull plating and reactor cores. Governments that spent decades refusing to share technology with each other suddenly open every vault, every research file, every classified program, because there is no version of survival that includes keeping secrets from your neighbors anymore. Lucy shows me the numbers on the third day, and even she looks stunned reading them aloud. 43 new warships already under construction, another 60 retrofitted from existing hulls, and that is not counting what the private companies are doing on their own. Private companies are building warships, I say. Private companies are building everything, she says. There is a group out of the Pacific coast that had a prototype railgun sitting in a lab for a decade because nobody would fund it. Now it is being welded onto a hull as we speak. There is another team that built something they are calling an ion scrambler, meant to interfere with targeting systems. Nobody asked if it was a good idea. They just needed hands that already knew how to build it. I try to imagine what the surface must look like right now. Work lights burning through the night in 100 cities. Engineers who have not seen their families in days. Welders and coders and physicists all pulling in the same direction for the first time in human history. It should feel like hope. Mostly it feels like watching a very large, very frightened animal try to become something else before it gets eaten. On the third night, unable to sleep despite my exhaustion, I pull up a global news feed just to see what the surface looks like from a distance. What I find surprises me more than anything the Dominion's fleet has done so far. Rival nations that have spent generations disputing borders are now sharing satellite data without hesitation. A famous broadcaster who built a career on dividing his audience into sides now stands in front of a camera and asks people to set aside every old grudge, just for a while, just long enough to matter. Volunteers line up outside recruitment centers in numbers too large to process quickly. farmers and teachers and shopkeepers standing beside soldiers, all of them willing to do whatever job needs doing, whether that means loading supply ships or simply keeping the lights on in cities that refuse to go dark out of fear. I find a clip of children in a schoolyard somewhere in South America, drawing pictures of the alien ships their parents described to them, not with fear on their small faces, but with a kind of fierce concentration, as if drawing the enemy carefully enough might somehow help. I do not know why that particular image stays with me longer than any of the military footage, but it does. Bishop calls me and Lucy into his office on the fourth day, along with two others I have only spoken to a handful of times before now. One is Nathan Kane, a broad-shouldered engineer who has spent the last 3 years maintaining Horizon Station's reactor systems, and the other is Claire Doyle, a young pilot transferred up from the surface only 6 weeks ago, still learning the layout of the corridors. "We have new orders," Bishop says. "Horizon Station is being folded into a combined defense fleet under Earth Command. We are not staying here as a listening post anymore. We are going to be part of the line." "What line?" Claire asks. Bishop pulls up a star chart, and on it, drawn in red, is a rough perimeter surrounding the inner solar system. This one, every ship Earth has, old and new, military and converted, is being assigned a position along this perimeter. The idea is simple. We cannot match their firepower ship for ship. So we do not fight ship for ship. We fight as a net, not a wall. Meaning what, exactly, I ask. Meaning when their fleet arrives, they will expect an enemy that lines up in neat formations, the way every other species they have conquered probably did. We are not going to do that. We are going to scatter, hide, strike where we are strongest and retreat before they can respond, and use every trick our species has ever come up with in a few thousand years of fighting each other. It will not be clean. It will not be honorable by their standards. But it might work. Nathan crosses his arms. And if it does not, Bishop looks at him for a long moment before answering. Then at least we go down as ourselves, and not as something we surrendered to become. Nobody argues with that. Over the next 2 days, Horizon Station transforms. Nathan and his engineering team strip out anything not essential to combat and combat support, replacing observation equipment with additional shielding, adding improvised weapon mounts that were never part of the station's original design. Claire spends hours in the station's small simulator pod, running drills against projected enemy ship silhouettes built from the data Lucy's sensors captured of the approaching fleet, learning the angles and blind spots of an enemy none of us have ever actually seen up close. I am reassigned from pure communications to a combined role, half communications and half tactical relay, because Earth Command wants every station and every ship linked into a single shared battle picture. It means I barely leave my console anymore. I eat there. I nearly sleep there, until Bishop physically orders me to a bunk for 4 hours because he needs me sharp, not just present. During one of those short rest periods, I meet the rest of the crew properly for the first time, gathered in the mess hall in the strange lull between preparations. There is Megan Sinclair, a former commercial pilot who signed up the moment the ultimatum was announced, leaving behind a husband and 2 children on the surface. There is Adam Whitfield, a quiet young man who used to work in a lab studying deep space signals and now spends his days calibrating targeting systems he never expected to need. There is Peter Vance, older than most of us, a veteran of a peacekeeping fleet that existed before Earth had ever imagined needing a real one, who tells stories in a low voice about conflicts most of us only read about in history lessons. Megan talks about her children, how she explained the situation to them in the simplest words she could find, how her youngest asked if the aliens would be angry that she left her toys out. Adam admits he has never fired a weapon of any kind in his life, that his entire career has been spent listening to the universe rather than fighting it, and that some part of him still cannot believe listening was not enough to keep everyone safe. Nathan says little, but I notice the way his hands never stop moving, tapping out calculations against the edge of the table even during a meal, as if his mind refuses to rest until every system on the station is as strong as he can make it. "You are all scared," Peter says, not unkindly, looking around the table at the younger faces. "Good. Scared people who keep working are more dangerous than confident people who stop thinking. Just do not let it make your hands shake when it matters." Adam laughs, a short, nervous sound. "Easy for you to say. You have done this before." "I have never done this before," Peter says. "Nobody has. There has never been a fight like the one coming. All I have is a little more practice being afraid and still functioning. That is all experience really is." Later that same day, Nathan walks me through the modifications he has made to the station's weapon systems, eager to explain, even though I understand only half of what he says. He points to a cluster of newly mounted launchers along the station's outer hull. "These fire clusters of small decoy drones," he says. "Keep, disposable, built from spare parts we had lying around. Each one mimics the energy signature of a much larger ship. If their targeting systems are anything like ours were a century ago, rigid, built to prioritize the biggest threat first, we can flood their sensors with false targets and slip real strikes through the confusion. And if their systems are smarter than that, then we adjust," Nathan says, shrugging. "That is the plan for everything right now. We do not know exactly what they can do, so we build things that can bend, instead of things that only work if we guessed correctly the first time." He shows me the asteroid field data next, the maze of rock and ice that Bishop chose for our defensive position, and explains how a smaller, faster ship could weave between fragments too dense and unpredictable for a larger vessel to follow safely. "Their ships are built for open space, for straight lines and overwhelming force," Nathan says. "Out here, size stops being an advantage. It becomes a liability. That is the whole idea. We do not meet them where they are strong. We drag the fight to where we are." I think about that a lot over the following hours, turning it over while I work, while Lucy tracks the fleet's steady advance, while the rest of the crew continues bracing the station for a battle none of us can fully picture yet. On the 6th day, with less than 12 hours left on the original deadline, the alien fleet slows. Lucy calls out the change the moment her sensors register it, and the whole bridge goes still. "They are not stopping," she says, "but they are decelerating. I think they are preparing to make final approach into the outer system." Bishop studies the display, watching the cluster of bright points that no longer look like a single distant star, but like a swarm, spreading wide as it nears, some vessels peeling off into what looks like a search pattern, others holding tight formation at the center. "Get me visual as soon as we have it," Bishop says. It takes another 2 hours before the station's long-range optics can resolve real detail, and when the image finally comes through, nobody in the room says a word for what feels like a very long time. The lead vessels are enormous, longer than any structure humanity has ever built, dark-hulled and angular, moving with a smooth, unhurried precision that somehow feels more frightening than if they had come in fast and aggressive. Behind them, smaller ships fan out in disciplined rows, hundreds of them, each one dwarfing anything in Earth's makeshift fleet. Claire, standing near the display, exhales slowly. "That is not a fleet," she says. "That is a message all on its own." "Then we had better make sure our answer is loud enough to be heard," Bishop says. Word comes down from Earth Command less than an hour later. The full defense fleet, drawn from every nation, every shipyard, every prototype, rushed into service over the last 6 days, has been given its final positions along the scattered perimeter Bishop described. Horizon Station is assigned to hold a section of that line near the edge of the asteroid belt, a natural maze of rock and debris that Nathan insists will make excellent cover for hit-and-run tactics, if we can survive long enough to use it. I send the final confirmation of our position back to command, and as I do, I glance at the clock. Less than 4 hours remain before the original 72-hour deadline expires. Bishop's voice comes over the station intercom one more time, quieter than before, steadier than I expect given everything closing in around us. "All hands, final preparations. Whatever any of us believed about ourselves a week ago, about our countries, our differences, our history of getting in our own way, none of that matters anymore. Out there is an enemy who thinks none of it ever mattered in the first place, that we were never worth more than a footnote. We are about to show them exactly how wrong that assumption is. Around me, the crew moves with quiet purpose, checking systems one final time, strapping into stations, exchanging glances that carry more than words ever could. Lucy squeezes my shoulder once before returning to her console. Claire runs through her simulator drills one last time, murmuring the sequences under her breath like a prayer. I look out at the swarm of alien ships now visible without magnification, close enough that their light no longer looks like stars at all, and I feel something settle in my chest that is not quite calm, but is no longer only fear either. It is resolve, sharpened by 6 days of watching an entire species refuse to give up, and it is enough, for now, to keep my hand steady on the console as the final hour begins to count down. The deadline passes without a single word from us, and 40 minutes later, the Dominion answers with fire. I feel it before I understand it, a tremor running through Horizon Station's frame as something strikes our outer shielding far from where I sit. Alarms flare across every console, and Lucy's voice cuts through the noise, sharp and fast. Incoming fire, multiple vectors, they are testing our perimeter. All hands to combat stations, Bishop calls, and the words barely finish leaving his mouth before the entire crew moves as one, months of drills collapsing into seconds of pure instinct. I strap into my console, tactical feed already open, watching a wall of data pour in from every ship along Earth's scattered defensive line. The picture that forms is chaos given shape, hundreds of alien vessels advancing from multiple directions at once, probing our formation the way a hand might probe a locked door, searching for the weakest hinge. They split their fleet, Lucy says. Smaller strike groups, maybe 20 ships each, hitting different points along our perimeter at the same time. Spreading us thin, Bishop says, studying the pattern. They think we will panic and pull back to defend everywhere at once. Are they wrong? Claire asks from her pilot seat, voice tight but steady. We will find out, Bishop says. Cole, get me a link to the other station commanders in our sector. If they are splitting their fleet, we can split our response and hit them exactly where Nathan's asteroid maze gives us the advantage. I patch through 3 other defensive positions holding the line nearby, their commanders' faces flashing onto my screen, all of them wearing the same expression of grim focus. Within seconds, a shared tactical plan takes shape, built not through some elegant unified strategy handed down from Earth Command, but through fast, plain talk between people who have spent 6 days preparing for exactly this moment. Pull your fastest ships into the debris field, Bishop tells the others. Let them chase. Everyone else holds position and waits for my signal. The first alien strike group reaches the edge of the asteroid maze less than 10 minutes later, 5 ships breaking formation to pursue Claire and 2 other pilots who peel away from the station, weaving deliberately close to the largest fragments of rock. I watch it through the shared tactical feed, my chest tight, unable to do anything but relay data and trust the people flying those ships to survive what comes next. The alien vessels follow, confident, fast, clearly built for speed rather than maneuvering through obstacles. The first one clips a fragment of rock barely larger than itself, and the impact sends it spinning off course, its hull scraping and buckling against stone that never should have been a threat to something so advanced. They did not expect the debris to actually be dangerous, Nathan says from beside me, watching the same feed, something like grim satisfaction in his voice. Their sensors probably flagged it as low risk. Big mistake. Claire's voice comes through the comm, breathless but sharp. 2 more inbound, staying wide of the rocks this time. They are learning. Then make them keep learning, Bishop says. Nathan, deploy the drone decoys, full spread. Nathan's hands move fast across his console, and a moment later dozens of small drones launch from hidden mounts along Horizon Station's hull, each one broadcasting a false signature designed to mimic a much larger warship. The alien sensors, built for a galaxy full of enemies who apparently never bothered with something so simple, register the sudden appearance of a dozen new threats and hesitate just long enough. Claire and the other two pilots use that hesitation to loop back through a narrow gap between two massive fragments, drawing their pursuers directly into a crossfire from three hidden human gunships that have been sitting silent and powered down since the battle began, waiting exactly for this moment. The exchange lasts only seconds. I watch two of the pursuing alien ships take direct hits and go dark, drifting now, weapons silent, while the remaining three break off, retreating back toward the open edge of the debris field. A ragged cheer goes up across the bridge, quickly cut short by Bishop's raised hand. "Do not celebrate yet," he says. "That was 5 ships against a fleet of thousands. This is not over. It is barely started." He is right, and the truth of it arrives less than a minute later, when Lucy's voice turns urgent again. "Commander, second strike group changing course, heading directly for the station. They are not chasing decoys anymore. I think they identified our command signature." "How many?" Bishop asks. 15 ships, closing fast. The bridge tightens with tension I can almost feel against my skin. 15 ships is more than our station's direct weapons can hope to handle alone, and I know Bishop knows it too, even as his voice stays level, giving orders without a trace of the fear I am certain he must feel. "All defensive systems online. Nathan, ready every countermeasure we have. Cole, get me a status update from the other positions. I want to know who can reinforce us and how fast." I relay the request, and the answers come back fragmented, urgent. Every station and ship in our sector dealing with its own version of the same crisis. Nobody has ships to spare. We are on our own, at least for the next several minutes. The alien strike group arrives in a tight formation, and their opening volley strikes Horizon Station's shielding hard enough that I feel it through the deck plating beneath my boots. Lights flicker. Somewhere down the corridor, a decompression alarm begins to wail before an automated system seals the breach. "Shields down to 60%, Lucy calls out. "Return fire, full spread," Bishop orders, and Adam, seated at the weapons console, answers without hesitation, his earlier nervousness apparently burned away by the reality of combat, replacing the fear of imagining it. Horizon Station's weapons, retrofitted and reinforced over the last 6 days, open fire on the approaching ships. I watch through the tactical display as our shots connect, and though most of them barely scratch the alien hulls, one lucky strike finds a weak point along a smaller vessel's engine housing, and it drifts out of formation, trailing debris. "One down," Adam says, and there is no triumph in his voice, only focus, the sound of a man doing a job he never trained for because it needs doing. The remaining 14 ships press closer, and I realize with a cold certainty that we cannot win this exchange through firepower alone. Our weapons are not strong enough. Our shielding will not hold much longer. Whatever chance we have depends entirely on the same unconventional thinking that worked against the first strike group. "Bishop," I say, an idea forming even as I speak it. "The Ion Scrambler prototype, the one built by the private team back on Earth. It shipped up here 2 days ago, right?" Nathan installed it on the auxiliary array. Bishop's eyes snap to Nathan. "Is it operational?" "Untested," Nathan says. "But operational, yes. Use it." Nathan's hands fly across his console, routing power from every non-essential system into the auxiliary array. A moment later, a pulse of energy unlike anything Horizon Station has fired before ripples outward from the station, invisible to the eye but registering immediately across every sensor feed. For 3 long seconds, nothing happens, and I brace myself for the possibility that the prototype has simply failed. Then, one by one, the approaching alien ships begin to drift, their formation breaking apart, weapons falling silent, running lights flickering erratically. "Their targeting systems just went dark," Lucy says, disbelief coloring her voice. "All of them, across the whole strike group. It worked, Nathan breathes, staring at his own console as if he does not quite trust the readout. It actually worked. Bishop does not waste the opening. Adam, fire everything we have. Now, while they are blind. Adam does not hesitate. Every weapon Horizon Station carries opens fire at once, concentrated on the closest disabled vessels before their systems can recover. I watch 3 more ships go dark in quick succession, their hulls scorched but not destroyed, drifting uselessly as the rest of the strike group scrambles to restore control. It is not a clean victory. 2 of our own smaller support craft take heavy damage in the chaos, and I hear Claire's voice come through the comm, tighter than before, reporting a hull breach on one of the gunships that helped spring the earlier ambush. Nathan is already routing emergency response teams before Bishop even gives the order, his earlier calm cracking just slightly at the thought of crew in danger. The remaining alien ships, their systems finally stabilizing, do not press the attack further. Instead, damaged and clearly rattled by an enemy, behaving nothing like whatever they expected, they retreat, pulling back toward the edge of the debris field and beyond, rejoining the larger fleet still holding position further out in the system. Before the quiet fully settles, Lucy's console chimes with an incoming request from a nearby defensive position, a smaller outpost called Meridian Point that held a section of the line 2 sectors over. The voice that comes through is young, female, and clearly struggling to stay composed. This is Meridian Point, requesting immediate medical assistance. We took heavy damage. Our senior medical officer did not survive the last exchange, and we have 4 crew members who need help. We cannot give them here. Bishop responds immediately, already pulling up Horizon Station's own medical bay status. Send your coordinates. We have a shuttle that can reach you within 20 minutes, and our surgeon can prep for incoming wounded now. Thank you, the voice says, cracking slightly before steadying again. Thank you, Horizon. The channel closes, and for a moment the bridge is silent again, the earlier relief replaced by something heavier. I think about the 11 ships we lost across the line, about how each number Lucy read off a moment ago represents someone's meridian point, someone's voice cracking as they ask strangers for help because there was nowhere else left to ask. Claire's voice returns over the comm, quieter now that the adrenaline has faded. Bishop, I want it on record. The gunship that took the hull breach, that was Owen Marsh's crew. He is Lucy's cousin. He is alive, but barely, and 2 of his people did not make it. I glance at Lucy, whose hands have gone still over her console, her face carefully blank in the particular way people go blank when they are refusing to fall apart in front of others who need them functioning. Bishop crosses the bridge and rests a hand briefly on her shoulder, saying nothing, because there is nothing useful to say. I am fine, Lucy says, before anyone asks. I am fine. Send the shuttle. We send the shuttle. Work continues, because it has to, because 1,000 other decisions still need making, even while grief tries to claim the space between them. I watch Lucy return to her console a few minutes later, eyes red but steady, and I do not comment on it, because I understand now that this is simply how the next stretch of our lives is going to work. Loss and duty, sitting side by side, neither one waiting politely for the other to finish. For a long moment, nobody on the bridge speaks. The tactical display shows a strange, uneasy quiet settling across our sector, smoke and debris drifting silently where ships once exchanged fire only minutes before. Casualty report, Bishop finally says, his voice rough. Lucy pulls the data, and I watch her expression carefully as she reads it, bracing myself for whatever comes next. 2 support craft with major damage. No crew losses reported yet, though 3 injuries confirmed on the gunship that took the hull breach. Other stations along the perimeter report similar mixed results, some losses, some successful defenses. Overall fleet-wide, we have lost 11 vessels across the whole line. They have lost at least 40, with dozens more damaged. The number should feel like good news, and in the coldest, most tactical sense, it is. We are still here. The line held, at least this first time. But 11 ships means 11 crews. Hundreds of people who woke up this morning as part of a species refusing to surrender, and who will not see the outcome of that refusal. Bishop closes his eyes for just a moment, the weight of the number settling visibly across his shoulders, before he opens them again and looks out at the crew still working around him. They came expecting an easy correction, he says quietly, more to himself than to any of us. They are not going to get one, but they are also not going to stop after a single bad afternoon. This was the vanguard, a test. What comes next will be worse. Nobody argues with him. Nobody has the energy left to argue with anything. I sit back at my console, hands finally still after what feels like hours of constant motion, and watch the tactical display as the wounded alien strike groups withdraw fully back toward their main fleet, still visible at the edge of our sensor range, patient, undiminished in overall size despite the losses they have taken. Lucy leans over toward me, voice low enough that only I can hear it. We actually held them off. For now, I say. For now is more than I expected 6 days ago, she says, and there is something almost like a smile trying to break through the exhaustion on her face. I look back at the display, at the smoke still drifting between fragments of rock that were never meant to be a battlefield, at the distant lights of a fleet that has just learned, for the first time in its long history of conquest, that this particular world is not going to fall quietly. Bishop's voice comes over the intercom one more time, quieter than his earlier speeches, worn down by the hours but not broken by them. Good work, everyone. Get what rest you can. They will regroup, and when they come back, they will come back with everything they have. We need to be ready. I do not know how much rest any of us will actually manage, hearts still racing, hands still faintly trembling now that there is finally a moment to notice it. But for the first time since the ultimatum arrived, sitting in the wreckage of a battle we were never supposed to survive, I let myself believe, just slightly, that survival might actually be possible. Later, once the medical shuttle returns from Meridian Point and the wounded are settled into Horizon Station's small infirmary, Bishop calls a short debrief in the mess hall, wanting every department to share what worked and what nearly cost us everything before exhaustion erases the details from memory. The decoy drones bought us time against the first strike group, Nathan says, but they will not fall for that trick twice. Their sensors adapted within minutes. Next time we use them, we need a second layer of deception ready before they catch on to the first. The scrambler is the real prize, Adam adds. If we can build more of those and get them distributed across the fleet before the next wave arrives, we could blind entire strike groups instead of just one. Assuming we have the parts, Nathan says. That prototype used components that are not exactly common. I will put together a list and get it to Earth Command, but do not expect miracles. We are still a species that only started taking this seriously 6 days ago. Peter Vance, sitting near the back of the room with a bandage wrapped around one forearm from a fall during the earlier chaos, speaks up in his usual low, steady voice. You are all thinking about hardware. That matters, but it is not the whole reason we survived today. We survived because 4 different commanders across 4 different positions trusted each other enough to build a plan in under a minute and execute it without arguing about who was in charge. That is not something you can build in a lab. That took the last 6 days, and honestly, longer than that. It took every one of us finally deciding to stop treating each other like strangers. Bishop nods slowly. He is right. Whatever else changes before the next attack, we hold on to that. The coordination is the actual weapon. Everything else just gives it teeth. The meeting breaks up not long after, everyone drifting off toward whatever rest they can manage before the next alarm inevitably sounds. I linger a moment longer than most, watching the mess hall empty out, thinking about Owen Marsh lying in the infirmary 2 decks below, about Meridian Point's cracked young voice asking strangers for help, about the 11 ships and their crews who will not get a debrief of their own. Bishop finds me still sitting there and lowers himself into the seat across from me, looking older than he did a week ago. You did well today, Cole, he says. It does not feel like well, I say. It will not for a long time, he says. Maybe ever, but we are still here, and so is everyone we love on the surface, at least for now. Hold on to that part. It is the only part that makes any of the rest of it bearable. I nod, though I am not sure I believe him yet. Outside the small viewport near our table, the stars continue their slow turn, indifferent as always, and somewhere beyond them, patient and undiminished, despite the losses we manage to inflict, the true weight of the Dominion's fleet begins gathering itself for whatever comes next. Outside the viewport, the stars continue their slow, indifferent turn, and somewhere beyond them, a wounded empire begins gathering its true strength for the fight still to come. 3 days of uneasy quiet end the moment Lucy's console erupts, with warnings so numerous that the display can barely keep up with rendering them. Commander, main fleet is moving. All of it. This is not another strike group. This is everything they have. Bishop is already at the tactical display before she finishes speaking, and I watch his face as the scale of what Lucy's sensors are reporting sinks in. Where the Vanguard numbered roughly 200 ships, spread across probing strike groups, the fleet now surging toward the inner solar system is something else entirely. Thousands of vessels moving in a single overwhelming formation, blotting out sections of starlight as they advance. That is not a fleet, Nathan says quietly. That is an entire empire's worth of anger. I do not have time to feel afraid before Earth Command's emergency broadcast reaches every ship and station along the defensive line. Grace Hollis's voice steady, despite what must be happening in every command center across the planet. All Earth forces, this is Fleet Command. The Dominion's primary battle fleet has broken from its holding position and is advancing on all defensive sectors simultaneously. This is the response our first engagement provoked. Hold your positions as long as tactically possible, but preserve your crews above all else. We cannot win a battle of pure numbers. We win by surviving long enough to make surviving cost them more than they are willing to keep paying. Hond. The words are meant to steady us, and in some clinical part of my mind, I understand the strategy behind them. But watching that formation grow larger on the display, with every passing minute, I feel any confidence built over the last 3 days start to crack. They are not splitting up this time, Lucy says. No probing groups, no testing our defenses piece by piece. They are coming straight through the center, aiming for Earth itself. Bishop's jaw tightens. Then we do not sit here waiting for them to reach us. Cole, get me every station commander in a 2-sector radius. We move to intercept along the outer edge of the defensive line, force them to fight through us before they reach the planet. I relay the order, watching as dozens of stations and ships across our sector begin repositioning, forming loose, scattered clusters rather than any traditional battle line, exactly the kind of unpredictable, decentralized defense Bishop and Earth Command spent the last week designing. It looks less like an army and more like a swarm of hornets refusing to abandon a nest, and for the first time, I understand that this disorganized appearance is deliberate, built specifically to deny the Dominion the clean, predictable battle their doctrine seems built to expect. The two fleets meet at the edge of the asteroid maze less than an hour later, and this time, there is no gradual escalation, no probing exchange of fire. The moment the Dominion's forward vessels enter weapons range, the sky around Horizon Station fills with light. Shields at 90% and dropping fast, Lucy calls out, voice tight over the roar of the station shaking around us. Return fire, concentrate on their smaller escort vessels, avoid the capital ships entirely, Bishop orders. We cannot hurt those directly, we just need to survive long enough to bleed their numbers. Adam's hands move across the weapons console with a speed and precision that would have seemed impossible in the calm, quiet man I met only a week ago. Around us, the tactical display shows dozens of small human vessels darting between larger enemy ships, using speed and the chaos of close-range combat to avoid direct confrontation with anything too powerful to survive fighting head-on. It is not enough. Within 20 minutes, Lucy's damage reports begin arriving faster than she can read them aloud, station after station along our sector reporting critical hits, some going silent entirely. I watch 3 separate green markers on the tactical display flicker and vanish, and I know without needing confirmation that each one represents dozens, maybe hundreds of people who are simply gone. Meridian Point is down, Lucy says, her voice hollow. Direct hit to their reactor core. No survivors reported. I think of the young voice that called for help only 3 days ago, of Owen Marsh recovering slowly in our own infirmary, spared only because his ship had already been damaged and pulled from the line before this assault began. The unfairness of it sits heavy and useless in my chest, because there is no time to feel it properly, only to keep working. Orbital defense platforms around Earth are taking heavy fire. Lucy continues, reading updates as fast as they arrive. 2 have already gone silent. Ground-based systems are engaging targets that made it through the outer defense, but Command is reporting the first confirmed atmospheric breach over the southern hemisphere. The words land like a physical blow. Atmospheric breach means the fighting has reached the surface, means the war I have been watching through sensor feeds and tactical displays has finally touched the world where my sister still lives, where children somewhere are probably being rushed into shelters that were never designed to withstand anything like what is now falling from the sky. Bishop's voice cuts through the rising panic on the bridge, hard and commanding. We cannot help the surface from here. Our job is this sector. Hold this sector. But holding grows harder with every passing minute. Horizon Station takes 3 direct hits in quick succession, and the lights flicker before emergency power kicks in, dimmer and less steady than before. Nathan disappears from his console entirely, racing down to engineering to personally manage a coolant leak threatening the reactor, his voice occasionally crackling over the comm with terse updates that grow shorter and more strained each time. Claire's voice breaks through the chaos, sharp with urgency. Bishop, I have 4 enemy fighters breaking formation, heading directly for the station's hull. I think they mean to board. The word lands differently than anything else that has happened so far. Weapons fire from a distance is one kind of fear. The idea of an enemy physically forcing their way inside our walls is another entirely. Seal all non-essential sections, Bishop orders immediately. Security teams to the outer airlocks. Cole, get me a direct line to Earth Command. I need to know if boarding actions are happening across the whole line or if we are an isolated target. I scramble to comply, and the answer that comes back is grim. Boarding attempts are happening at multiple points along the defensive perimeter, a new tactic the Dominion apparently held in reserve, perhaps intended to seize key command stations rather than simply destroy them. The 4 fighters reach Horizon Station's hull within minutes, and I hear the distant, unsettling sound of something latching onto the outer plating, followed by the sharper, more immediate alarm of a breach warning near the eastern airlock. Peter Vance, still favoring his bandaged arm, is already moving toward the sound with 2 younger security officers close behind him, and I catch a glimpse of grim determination on his face that reminds me of everything he said in the mess hall days ago about experience simply being practice at staying functional through fear. I do not witness what happens in that corridor directly, only hear it through fragmented comm chatter, shouted warnings, the controlled chaos of people fighting to protect their home from something that has never once considered them worth negotiating with. When Peter's voice finally comes back over the comm, it is breathless but alive. Breach contained, 2 intruders down, the others retreated back through their own airlock when they realized we were not going to make this easy. No casualties on our side, though Officer Kane took a hit to the shoulder, nothing critical. Relief floods through me, sharp and immediate, quickly tempered by the knowledge that Horizon Station is only one small piece of a battle still raging across the entire system. Status of the wider fleet, Bishop asks, and Lucy pulls the data with hands that have not stopped shaking slightly since Meridian Point went silent. We are holding, barely. Losses across the defensive line are heavy, roughly 30% of our committed forces, either destroyed or disabled, but their advance has slowed considerably. They expected to punch straight through to Earth within the first hour. It has been almost 3, and they are still fighting through the outer perimeter. What is stopping them? Bishop asks. Us, Lucy says simply. Every ship, every station, every improvised trick we have thrown at them, all of it adding up into something they clearly did not plan for. They are taking losses too, Commander. Significant ones. It is not victory. Looking at the tactical display, at the scattered wreckage marking where entire crews used to be, at the ongoing chaos still unfolding across dozens of sectors, I cannot pretend this looks anything like victory. But it is not the swift, clean correction the Dominion promised either, and somewhere in that gap between their expectation and this brutal, grinding reality, I sense the first real crack in what once looked like an unstoppable certainty. Before Bishop can answer, a new problem lands squarely in my lap. The station's primary communication array, the one link keeping Horizon Station connected to the shared tactical picture across the entire defensive line, flickers and dies, damaged by the same barrage that nearly took out our reactor. Cole, talk to me, Bishop says, watching my screen fill with static, where a moment ago it held live data from a dozen other positions. Primary array is down, I say, running diagnostics as fast as my hands allow. We still have local sensors, but we are blind to everything happening outside our immediate sector. If command needs to redirect us or warn us about an incoming strike group, we will not hear it. Can it be fixed? Bishop asks. Not from in here, I say, already unstrapping from my console. The relay junction is on the outer hull, near Section 4. Someone has to go out and manually reroute the backup line. Bishop hesitates only a moment, weighing the risk of sending someone outside during an active battle against the risk of fighting blind. Take Peter with you. Move fast. I do not remember agreeing to go myself, only that somewhere between hearing the problem and hearing Bishop's order, it simply became obvious that it had to be me, since I know the communication systems better than anyone else still able-bodied on the bridge. Peter meets me at the airlock, still favoring his bandaged arm but moving with the same steady competence he showed against the borders. He checks my suit seals without a word, then his own, and together we cycle through the airlock into the cold, silent vacuum outside. The battle looks different from out here, stripped of the tactical display's clean lines and color-coded threats, reduced instead to distant flashes of light against the black, silent, because sound has nothing to travel through, somehow more terrifying for its silence than any alarm ever was. We move along the hull toward Section 4, magnetic boots keeping us anchored, my heart hammering hard enough that I can hear it over my own breathing inside the suit. Halfway there, a flash of light much closer than the others briefly floods my vision, and Peter's hand closes hard on my shoulder, pulling me flat against the hull as a piece of drifting debris, once part of some ship on either side of this war, tumbles past close enough to touch. Keep moving, Peter says through the suit comm, voice tight but controlled. We are almost there. We reach the relay junction, and my hands, shaking slightly despite everything I tell myself, work through the manual override sequence, exposed wiring and cold metal fighting me every step of the way. It takes 4 long minutes, each one stretching unbearably as flashes of distant combat continue lighting the black sky around us, before the junction finally clicks into place and the backup line engages. Cole, I have you back. Lucy's voice crackles through, relief evident even through the static. Full tactical feed restored. Get back inside, both of you. Bishop's voice follows immediately. Now. We do not need telling twice. The return trip feels longer than the trip out. Every meter of open hull, a fresh reminder of how little protects us out here, until finally the airlock cycles closed behind us, and I can breathe air that is not filtered through a suit's recycled supply. Back at my console, hands still trembling from cold and adrenaline both, I watch the restored tactical feed and understand immediately why Bishop pushed so hard to get it back. Earth Command has issued a fleet-wide coordination order, gathering every remaining mobile ship into a single concentrated counterstrike against the weakened leading edge of the Dominion's formation, a strike that depends entirely on stations like ours relaying targeting data in real time. Without that feed, Horizon Station would have missed the order entirely, left isolated and useless at exactly the moment its part in a larger, coordinated push might matter most. "Good work, Cole," Bishop says quietly, and I nod, still catching my breath, unable to find words adequate to the fear I am only now allowing myself to fully feel now that the immediate danger has passed. Nathan's voice returns over the comm, strained but steady, coolant leak contained, reactor stable, for now, we can keep fighting. "Then we keep fighting," Bishop says, and though exhaustion and grief weigh visibly on every word, there is no hesitation in them at all. I glance at the tactical display one more time, at the vast, wounded shape of the Dominion's fleet, still pressing forward despite everything thrown against it, and I think about Grace Hollis's words from 3 days ago, about winning not through strength, but through making survival cost more than anyone expected to pay. The cost, so far, has been enormous on both sides, but for the first time since that first alarm tore through Horizon Station's quiet, I let myself wonder if perhaps, against every reasonable expectation, that cost might eventually prove too high for the Dominion to keep paying. Somewhere below us, Earth burns in places it should never have had to burn, and somewhere ahead of us, an empire that has never lost a war like this one begins, slowly and reluctantly, to consider the possibility that this time might be different. The counter-strike order Earth Command issues is unlike anything attempted so far, and I understand, reading through the details as they scroll across my restored console, that it is also the last real option left to us. Every mobile ship, still capable of combat, is being pulled into a single formation, Bishop explains to the bridge, his voice hoarse from hours of continuous command, not to fight the whole Dominion fleet directly, to strike their command vessel. "Their flagship," Lucy says, disbelief coloring her voice. "That thing is at the center of their entire formation, surrounded by everything they have left. Which is exactly why nobody would expect an attack aimed at it," Bishop says. "Command believes, and I agree, that this fleet operates on a rigid chain of authority. Cut the head off, and the rest may hesitate long enough for us to change the shape of this fight entirely." Nathan, still monitoring the reactor from his console after the earlier crisis, frowns at the tactical projection. "That is not a small risk, Commander. Every ship involved in that strike is going in with almost no support. If it fails, we lose the ships and pilots we most need for whatever comes after. If we do not try," Bishop says, "there may not be a whatever comes after." Horizon Station's remaining combat-capable vessels are called into the effort, and Claire volunteers before Bishop even finishes reading the list of required pilots, her voice steady despite everything her face has shown over the last several hours of fighting. "I know these debris patterns better than almost anyone left," she says. "I can get a strike team close without their sensors catching us in time to properly respond." Bishop studies her for a long moment before nodding. "Take 2 of the fastest gunships. Peter goes with you as tactical lead. Cole, you are staying with me. I need you managing the coordination feed for the whole strike, not just our piece of it." Some part of me wants to argue, wants to be out there doing something more immediate than sitting at a console relaying data while people I have come to care about fly directly into the most dangerous target in this entire war. But I know Bishop is right. The coordination feed matters as much as any single gun, maybe more, since a strike this precise depends entirely on every participating ship knowing exactly where every other ship is at every moment. The assembled strike force gathers at the edge of the asteroid maze, dozens of small, fast vessels drawn from a dozen different stations and commands, united now under a single desperate purpose. I watch the formation take shape on my display, feel the strange mix of pride and terror that comes from seeing so many different flags and markings moving together as one. "All units, this is Fleet Command," comes Grace Hollis's voice, broadcast to every ship in the strike force simultaneously. You are about to attempt something no defending force has ever managed against the Dominion. Whatever happens in the next hour, the galaxy will know that Earth did not simply survive this war. Earth fought it, on our own terms, to the very end. The strike force moves out, weaving through the debris field with a coordination that would have seemed impossible 7 days ago, before any of us had ever needed to learn how to fight like this. I track their progress through the tactical feed, my hands steady now despite everything, focused entirely on the single task in front of me. They are through the outer screen, I report, watching markers advance past the Dominion's forward escort ships, using the same decoy and scramble tactics refined over days of brutal trial and error to slip past defenses clearly still struggling to adapt to an enemy that refuses to fight the way their doctrine expects. Enemy flagship coming into range, Claire's voice comes through, tight with concentration. It is enormous, Bishop. I have never seen anything like this up close. Stay focused, Bishop says. Peter, targeting priority. Working on it now, Peter answers, his voice carrying the same steady calm I remember from the mess hall days ago. Their shielding is heaviest around the primary reactor housing, thinner, near what looks like a secondary command structure toward the ship's forward section. If we can breach that, even if we cannot destroy the whole vessel, we might disable their ability to coordinate the rest of the fleet. Do it, Bishop says. What follows is the longest 10 minutes of my life, watching markers on a screen that represent real people flying real ships directly into the heart of an alien empire's most protected vessel. I relay targeting data as fast as it comes in, coordinate the timing of each wave of small craft peeling in toward the flagship while others draw fire away from them, and try not to think too hard about how many of those markers might simply vanish before this is over. 2 ships are lost in the initial approach, destroyed by the flagship's point defense systems before they can even reach effective weapons range. I hear the names over the comm, hear the brief, terrible silence that follows each one, and force myself to keep working, because stopping helps no one. Claire's gunship, along with 4 others, breaks through the outer defense screen and reaches striking distance of the forward command structure Peter identified. In position, she says, voice tight but clear. Firing now. The strike hits exactly where Peter calculated, a concentrated volley from 5 small ships tearing into a section of the flagship's hull that was never designed to withstand direct, sustained fire at close range. I watch the tactical display flare with the impact, watch the enormous vessel's shape shudder slightly, an almost imperceptible change against something so vast, and then watch something far more significant happen across the rest of the Dominion's formation. Commander, Lucy says, staring at her console in disbelief. Their entire fleet just changed behavior. Ships that were advancing are slowing. Formations that were coordinated are starting to scatter. The strike worked, Bishop breathes. They lost their command coordination. It is not total victory, not yet. The Dominion's flagship, though heavily damaged, remains intact, and thousands of enemy vessels still fill the system around Earth. But something fundamental has shifted, visible even to me, watching only through data and markers on a screen. An empire built on the certainty of victory, on the assumption that no enemy has ever truly threatened its command structure, has just discovered that this assumption no longer holds. All units, disengage and return to defensive positions, Grace Hollis's voice orders, cutting through the celebration beginning to build across the comm channels. Do not press the advantage. Let them decide what happens next. Claire and the surviving strike ships pull back, and I watch their markers retreat safely through the debris field, relief flooding through me so completely that my hands finally, truly stop shaking for the first time since this entire war began. Across the bridge, a strange, exhausted quiet settles over everyone, the kind that comes not from calm, but from having run entirely out of adrenaline to spend. Adam leans back from his weapons console and simply stares at the ceiling for a long moment, breathing slowly, as if reminding his own body that it is allowed to stop bracing for the next impact. Nathan finally steps away from the reactor readouts he has barely left in hours, rubbing at eyes that have clearly not properly closed in far too long. Lucy reaches over without a word and grips my hand once, briefly, before letting go and returning to her console, and I understand the gesture for exactly what it is. A small, wordless acknowledgement of everything neither of us has time to say aloud yet. Bishop stands at the center of it all, watching the tactical display as the scattered remains of the Dominion's formation continue to hold position rather than press forward again, and I notice, for the first time since this entire war began, that his shoulders have dropped just slightly, some fraction of the enormous weight he has carried since that first alarm easing, even if only for a moment. "Report from the other sectors," he says quietly, and Lucy pulls the data, her voice steadier now than it has been in hours. "Similar pattern everywhere along the line, Commander. Wherever our forces struck hard enough to matter, their coordination broke down. Fleet-wide, enemy advances have stalled completely. Nobody is pressing forward anymore." "And our own losses?" Bishop asks, because he always asks, because refusing to look away from the cost has been the one constant of his command since the very first hour of this war. "Heavy," Lucy says, "heavier than anything before. But we are still here, Commander. All along the line, we are still here." Bishop nods slowly, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, allows himself something close to a genuine breath. What follows is not the immediate, clean victory I might have imagined a week ago, back before I understood how wars like this actually end. Instead, there is a long, tense silence stretching across the system, both fleets holding position, neither side immediately renewing the assault, while somewhere far beyond Earth's reach, whatever remains of the Dominion's command structure debates what happens next. It takes 6 hours for their answer to arrive, transmitted not as another ultimatum, but as something closer to a message between equals, cold and clearly reluctant, but fundamentally different in tone from anything they sent before this war began. To the species designated human, this is a communication from the acting command of the Kreisi fleet. "Our assessment of your world has been proven incomplete. Your resistance has exceeded all projected outcomes. Continued engagement carries costs our command deems no longer justified by the objective. Hostilities are to cease, pending further evaluation. This is not a surrender. This is a recognition that our previous assumptions require correction." Bishop reads the message aloud to the bridge, and for a long moment, nobody quite knows how to respond. It is not the total, triumphant victory that stories are usually made of. It is smaller than that, and stranger, and somehow more honest for being exactly that. "They are not leaving because we beat them," Nathan says slowly. "They are leaving because we made beating us cost more than they expected to pay." "That is enough," Peter says, his voice carrying through the calm from Claire's returning gunship. "That is exactly enough." Before any of that, though, before the numbers and the speeches and the slow work of understanding what we had actually survived, there is a smaller, quieter moment that matters more to me than almost anything else that happens in those first hours after the ceasefire. I request a channel down to the surface, my hand still faintly unsteady, and this time it takes longer than usual for the connection to establish. Networks across the planet overloaded with millions of people trying to reach each other at once. When my sister's face finally appears on the screen, she is sitting in a shelter somewhere beneath her building, dust on her shoulders, a blanket wrapped around her, but alive, unmistakably alive. "Daniel," she says, and her voice breaks on my name in a way that undoes something tightly held in my chest. "I am here," I say. "I am okay. Are you hurt?" "No," she says, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "No, we are okay. The building 2 streets over is gone. We heard it happen. We did not know if it would reach us next. It is over," I tell her, and saying the words aloud makes them feel more real than reading Grace Hollis's ceasefire message ever did. "They are leaving. It is over." She does not answer right away, just looks at me through the screen, and I watch her absorb the words slowly, the way a person absorbs something too large to understand all at once. "You did this," she finally says. You and everyone up there. We did it together, I say. All of us. Down there and up here both. We talk for only a few more minutes before the connection strain forces the call to end, but those minutes stay with me longer than almost anything else from that entire day. A small, ordinary conversation between two siblings that somehow carries the entire weight of everything the last 2 weeks meant. Over the following days, the Dominion's fleet withdraws from Earth's system, slowly, cautiously, watched every step of the way by a defensive line that refuses to fully stand down until the last enemy vessel passes beyond the edge of our sensor range. I spend those days working alongside Lucy and Nathan, compiling casualty reports that never stop being difficult to read, coordinating with Earth Command as the full scale of the war's cost becomes clear across every continent and every station that took part in the defense. The numbers are staggering. Tens of thousands of lives lost across the fleet, entire cities on the surface bearing scars that will take generations to fully heal, an economy and infrastructure pushed to their absolute limits in less than 2 weeks. Victory, when it finally arrives, does not feel like the word implies. It feels like survival, hard-won and expensive, carrying grief in equal measure with relief. Grace Hollis addresses the entire planet 3 days after the Dominion's withdrawal is confirmed complete, her voice broadcast to every screen and speaker across Earth, and though I have heard her speak many times over the last 2 weeks, this is the first time I hear something in her voice that sounds, unmistakably, like hope. We did not win this war because we were stronger than our enemy, she says. We won it because we finally chose to be one people instead of many, because ordinary men and women across every nation on this planet decided that surrender was a price too high to pay, no matter the cost of resistance. We lost more than any of us can easily bear. We will spend a long time mourning what this war has taken from us. But we are still here, sovereign, unbroken, and the galaxy beyond our sky now knows exactly what that means. I watch her speech from the mess hall on Horizon Station, surrounded by the people who have become, over the course of 2 impossible weeks, something closer to family than colleagues. Lucy sits beside me, still quieter than she used to be, still carrying the weight of Meridian Point and everything after it, but present, alive, here. Nathan argues quietly with Adam about whether the scrambler technology should be shared openly with every nation or kept under tighter Earth Command control, an argument that feels almost absurdly normal after everything we have been through. Claire and Peter sit together near the window, watching the stars in a silence that needs no words to fill it. Bishop finds me afterward, standing alone near the same viewport where I first watched a single point of alien light grow brighter across 7 unbearable days. You did good work, Cole, he says. Better than good. We all did, I say. Yes, he agrees. We did. I look out at the stars, at the vast dark space where an empire that called us primitive once believed it could simply demand our surrender and receive it without resistance. Somewhere out there, word of what happened here is already spreading, carried by whatever remains of the Dominion's retreating fleet, reaching other worlds, other empires, other species who may soon look toward this small blue planet with something other than dismissal. We are not the same species we were 2 weeks ago. We lost too much to ever fully return to who we used to be, divided and comfortable in our old grievances, certain that our differences mattered more than what we might build together. But we are still here, still ourselves, and somewhere in that simple, stubborn fact lies the only answer that ever truly mattered. They commanded us to surrender. We answered with everything we had, and we are still standing. Outside the viewport, the stars continue their slow, patient turn, indifferent as always to the wars fought beneath them, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I find that I am no longer afraid to watch them.